Stealth technology, the internet, GPS in the palm of your hand, autonomous operation.
Technology is a driver of our times. Since its founding in 1958 in the midst of the Cold War, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has been a driver of technology. Welcome to Voices from DARPA, a window into DARPA's core of program managers. Their job, to redefine what's possible.
My name is Tyler McQuaid. Since 2013, I have been a program manager in DARPA's Defense Sciences Office.
And I'm your DARPA host, Ivan Amato. Tyler, I'd like to start out with just sort of learning a little bit about you as a program manager. So maybe you could tell us something about your background and how that relates to the kinds of programs you've been developing and pursuing.
Ivan, I'm a molecular guy. I love molecules. I have since I was in high school, and even beyond high school, sort of earlier. You know, I'm a sort of a nova junkie. The cosmos, billions and billions of stars. Well, I was more interested in the billions and billions of molecules. I've always wanted to be an explorer, and by the time I got to the age where I might explore something, all the charted lands had been charted, and there were no more uncharted lands. So I looked to kind of frontiers that you couldn't see, and molecules fit that. A little more defined than physics because you can put it in a bottle a lot of times, especially in the area that I'm very comfortable in, organic synthesis. You can make stuff and see it, and you can test the properties, and you can play with the combination of atoms that are together, and really it was sort of this palette that I could play with, and I really like that. It was exploring the world in a totally different way.
Always been amazed at how, just putting together atoms in certain geometries, certain bonding patterns can come together into materials with all kinds of different properties, skin and bone and synthetic
it's crazy,
polymer.
Right? I mean, you go from having something that can form life to something that explodes to something that makes beautiful colors to something that makes your cookies smell great and taste great. It's all chemistry.
You're a molecules guy.
Yeah.
There actually are not that many molecules people here at DARPA, which is interesting. So as a rep of this minority, how are you taking that interest in the form of programs?
In the Defense Sciences Office, one of the things that's going on right now, one of the zeitgeists, is revolutionizing science. How do we do science but faster, better? And one of the things that is interesting about chemistry, especially when we're talking about the makers, the people who make materials, make small molecules, make medicines, it's a really slow process. I really like the idea of reinventing science, and in chemistry there's a lot of opportunity to reinvent the science.
So let me ask, when you say reinventing science, do you mean the actual process, the way we're asking questions, the way we're trying to answer those questions? And if can you be a little more detailed about what you have in mind?
Chemistry is a tough subject. We have lots of parameters that we don't often know how we're controlling them. But if we did all of the chemistry in a much more controlled environment where the environment was being constantly monitored, we might come up with much, much more reproducible chemistry, which will then mean it can be transportable. So in other words, if I have a machine that's doing the chemical reaction and recording how it's done, then that code, that record, can be sent from one lab to another. So you could accelerate it in the same way that the internet allowed you to accelerate how information was transportable. What if you could do that with molecules?
Tyler, this might be a good time to talk a little bit about, say, two of the programs that you're working on. And what I have in mind is the Fold Effects program and the MakeIt program. So why don't we start with Fold Effects?
Fold Effects, that's a program that stands for Folded Non-Natural Polymers with Biological Function. In the Fold Effects program, we're making polymers that mimic natural polymers so that we might make biotherapeutics more robust. So right now, if you get one of the more modern drugs right now, a good portion of them are made from proteins, think something like antibodies. So for example, Humira or insulin, those are examples of protein biotherapeutics. The problem is they are not heat stable. And if something isn't heat stable, it's not going to end up in a medic's bag. So our soldiers, at the very place where they're going to be most vulnerable, don't have access to the most advanced medicines because many of them are just fragile. And so we have to transport them back to an environment where you have refrigerators, you have handling equipment that can allow you to control that environment around the medicine. Well, what if you were to make a non-natural? There are lots of natural fibers that we used to use, and we've replaced them with non-natural fibers because they're more robust.
You mean like silk to nylon?
Yeah, exactly. So what if you were to take those same sort of beneficial properties that you get from plastics and you were to merge them with the beneficial properties of the biological polymers like proteins and DNA? And so that's the Fold Effects program, but it's a platform. It's about how we make those and then how we discover them.
So in a way, if you think about all of the possible molecules that one could make, the small ones, like an aspirin, or the larger ones like these protein-based medicines you're talking about, there really is sort of an infinitude of possibilities, like an infinite space that you could possibly search and explore.
Yeah.
What you're saying here is you're trying to develop some tools that will enable even just a few people to go explore some of the regions of this infinite space that just have not been looked at before. Am I on track?
Oh, you're so on track. It gets back to my whole desire to explore that I talked about, from my childhood. It is really about giving researchers a capability to be able to explore these universes. It's almost like a Hubble telescope for this particular galaxy or universe of molecular space.
So that was Fold Effects.
Yeah.
I'm also interested in the MakeIt program. Can you say a little bit about what you're doing there?
MakeIt is a platform technology for making small molecules. And in this particular case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to democratize chemistry. So what if you could have a system that a biologist or any scientist came up and typed in the target and the machine figured out how to make it, even if there was no recipe available, so that the machine would figure out a possible set of ways to make something and then would go about testing each one of those ways until it found a solution. Then it would log that solution in a cloud or in its data bank, and now that molecule could be made any time. And in addition, the system would also figure out how to make more of it, so that initially it would do really small scale synthesis, that means milligrams, and then once it figured out a solution, it would then also automatically scale it up.
Can you offer to us a concrete example? Maybe you could think of a problem or a particular receptor, for example, in a cell that you might want as a target, and then explain how the MakeIt framework would go about interacting with that receptor and perhaps solving a medical or other biological problem.
Yeah. For example, one very popular target for the heart disease area is PCSK9. And so there's probably many papers that come out every year that describe inhibitors that have been discovered against that target. The structures are available. Let's say that I'm a researcher and I want to study some aspect of a complex cellular system, and having access to the PCSK9 inhibitor would be really useful. But maybe I want one that's selective in a certain way that isn't commercially available, but somebody's reported it. Now, I might contact that researcher who's made it before, and maybe they ran out, and it's going to take them 3 months to make it. But if I have access to a MakeIt device, I can just go type in the structure and have the material maybe the next day or at the end of the week. And in addition to that, I have it memorized. The machine has kept that in its memory bank. So if someone else in my university environment, for example, wants to make that, they type it in and it'll be out that day because the solution will already be there. It's a way of saying chemistry has been documented since its inception, especially synthetic chemistry, through what are called experimentals. These are documents that the researcher is using to try to capture what they did in the laboratory to make something. They're writing it down like a recipe. So a lot of times we'll leave out details that we think are not necessary, but are necessary. And sometimes we didn't even know they were necessary. So when another researcher comes in and tries to read that cookbook like experimental, it might take them months to reproduce it. And they may never. Why should we waste our human effort by not making sure that we document that outcome, that experiment, in a way that can guarantee reproduction?
So you're talking about capturing procedural knowledge?
Correct. Yes, the MakeIt system is not just an artificial intelligence system or a cloud system that's archiving. it's a machine that's doing the chemistry, so that the machine will be reproducible. You'll be able to recreate that machine in any lab you want as long as you replicate that machine faithfully and it runs the routines that you've recorded in one lab versus another faithfully. You're going to reproduce chemistry everywhere you want to.
One of the things that I find fascinating about DARPA is that it is perhaps unique in its place in the overall technology development ecosystem. And as a program manager and someone who's been in academia and I think also in industry, and now here at DARPA, can you talk to us a little bit about how DARPA might be playing some interesting or perhaps even unique roles in the overall technology ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's a very exciting role. DARPA is that one place where we are thinking about innovation unconstrained. Like, where can we go? Now, in my mind, the reason why we're doing that is because it fits our mission space. If you want to create or prevent surprise, it's best to get to that new universe of chemistry sooner rather than later. And so we take innovations from all of the other funding agencies. In other words, they're seeding it, and we look for when a wave is beginning, and we push it hard and let it crest fast. DARPA is critical because we are structuring what I consider to be that crescendo investment as we are trending towards something amazing. And, the internet is an example, and I'm really emulating that with MakeIt. I want to create the internet of molecules. How do you transfer molecules from one place to another? In the same way as a 3D printing concept. You have a design, you could put that design in the cloud, and then if you have a 3D printer, you could transfer that design from one place to another. So they are related, and I'm, constantly inspired by what DARPA has done previously.
Is there a question, Tyler, that you wished I had asked you during this discussion that I didn't? And if so, ask the question yourself and answer it.
What's my favorite aspect of chemistry? The answer for most chemists, what's the answer for most chemists, Ivan? Do you know?
I love that the structure of a molecule relates to its function.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah, most of my friends maybe are sort of Cro-Magnons, I guess. Everybody likes explosions. But I actually like the smell of organic chemistry. So pretty much almost all esters, when people go into 31 flavors, they're thinking of maybe, mint chocolate chip. I'm actually smelling all of the esters and wondering, I wonder if that's this ester or that ester.
And Tyler, for those who don't know, so an ester actually refers to a particular chemical motif. If I recall from my own organic chemistry, part of it, there's a carbon with an oxygen double bonded, a few other things we don't know, have to go into the details except to say that it is a particular kind of molecular motif that can have variations.
Yeah, class of compounds. So I really like the class of compounds that are associated with flavorings. And I don't mean just non-natural flavorings. I mean natural and non-natural, like a coconut. It smells the way it does because of chemistry. And that always just really made me excited.
So Tyler, I've really enjoyed talking with you today about your programs, about chemistry, about DARPA. So thanks for being here.
Ivan, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for having me. I'm really glad to relate my thoughts about chemistry and DARPA.
And thank you, listeners, for sharing this time with us. Tune in next time for another Voice from DARPA. For more information about DARPA, the program managers, and the breakthrough technologies they are developing, visit us online at darpa.mil.